Hello friends. So today I'm just going to talk about how I ended up in the Royal Marines Commandos. So the world's toughest infantry force, actually an amphibious force, but it's the toughest infantry training in the world. So if you join the military anywhere in the world, the Royal Marines 32 weeks of training I went through is notably the hardest. So, who am I? I'm Chris THRALL. I'm the author of Eating Smoke. It's the memoir of how I became addicted to crystal meth in Hong Kong and ended up working for the Hong Kong Triads. And I was deeply in what they call clinical psychosis. So, it's quite an interesting story if you like that sort of thing. So, how did I join the Royal Marines? I grew up with a guy called Dan, and Dan and I had quite a rivalry, I suppose you could say. It was a friendly rivalry, but he used to spur me on to do things that I probably would never have normally considered. We went on holiday together when we were, I think, like 19 or something. We went to New York, just had an absolute blast, meeting girls and taking them for dinner on top of the what was the World Trade Center, the old World Trade Center. And Dan and I left school. Neither of us passed hardly any exams. And Dan's dad was a sergeant major in the Commandos, which is the Royal Marines Commandos. And he'd been in the Falklands War. He was kind of iconic, a bit of a hero in the forces. And he said of his Falklands experience, "I took down boys and I brought back men." So Dan, with his options limited, he decided he wasn't going to do university and all this sort of thing as he'd planned. He was going to go on the 3-day potential recruits course. Now, this is a 3-day course. It's a full-bore introduction to Royal Marines training and Royal Marines life. It's done over the course of 72 hours, as I said, and it takes place at Lympstone Commando, which is where all the commandos train. So Dan had gone on this course, and I should say this is just to get into the Royal Marines. So before doing this, you've got to go to the recruiting office, you've got to prove yourself in an interview, you've got to do pull-ups. If you make the grade, so out of every 1,000 people that walk into the recruiting office, approximately 30 will end up with a green beret, just to show you how difficult this is. So Dan had done the recruiting office, he'd done the pull-ups, he'd done his interview, and he'd gone on to Lympstone. And he was doing the 3-day course just to get into training in the Marines. So this isn't training. This is just to see, are you a good investment? Do you show the commando qualities? Things like cheerfulness under adversity, tenaciousness. Basically, it's all about your tenaciousness. They're not looking for supermen and the world's fittest guys like they always say. If you're an Olympic athlete and you try and join the Marines, you'll probably fail because it's a different kind of toughness. So Dan went on this 3-day course. They put him through hell, not just interviews and tests and this sort of thing, but the first day they make you fall backwards off the 5-meter high diving board. It might even be 10 meters. It was a while ago, obviously I did it. They make you just stand on the edge of the diving board and you've got to fall backwards wearing boots and a uniform and webbing pouches with 2 bricks in, and you just fall backwards off that diving board and you smack into the water at a hell of a rate, and then you've just got to recover yourself. And they're just testing to see if you got bottle, right? So that's the start. You then swim for an hour in the pool, which for rubbish swimmers like me, or I was back then, I'm getting better at swimming now. I can swim swim a few miles now in one go. Back then I was pretty rubbish. They have you swim for a mile, about an hour in the pool. So you're swimming across, doing whips, various sort of exercises. You then do gym sessions, which is all based on the United States Marine Corps requirements. So it's like 50 press-ups, something called burpees, which you might be familiar with, pull-ups, sprints, more sprints, then more sprints. And on the subsequent days, you have to run 1.5 miles wearing your boots and your combat jacket. And you have to do that in about under 11 minutes, I think it was. And you also run the assault course, which is got to be one of the toughest military assault courses in the world. It's funny how running an assault course, which takes you about 13 minutes, is equally as hard as marching 30 miles, speed marching, I should say, 30 miles across Dartmoor, which is like a rugged national park we have here in the UK. It's funny how the two things can get you equally as ball bags, you know. So you run the assault course and then you do the endurance course. The endurance course is 2.5 miles of course up in the Highlands, and it's interspersed with underwater tunnels. So when I did it, they're all corrugated iron tunnels that go deep underground, and they carry on for anything up to 200 meters, and they're all caving in at parts. And to make matters worse, they've got rivers running through them. And in training for real, you're carrying a weapon and you've got all your fighting order on, right? You're literally like that. You've got that much air to try to squeeze yourself through, so it's, you know, pretty claustrophobic. When you've done that 2.5 mile course, you have to then run 4 miles back to camp. Although on our potential recruits course, we ran 1 mile, and then they surprised us by having the transport there waiting for us, which is not something that happens a lot in the Corps, as we call it, the Royal Marines Corps. So anyway, Dan comes home off this course and he is full of it. He's been on that course. He was with a Welsh rugby player. You know, he's with all these guys that really worked hard to pass. And out of the 33 people he went on that course with, he was one of the 3 to pass it. So this is the level of arduousness we're looking at, right? And he came to see me. I was living homeless in my car. So I'd not had the easiest of childhoods. Not a feel sorry for me story. I wouldn't have it any other way, but, you know, I went through things that, yeah, kids shouldn't really have to go through. Anyway, who cares? I digress. So what I'm trying to say is like, I wasn't a guy you tell what I can and can't do. I wasn't nasty. I wasn't like a bully or anything like that, but I kind of had a bit of angry man syndrome, you know. It's like, you don't tell me what I can and can't do. You haven't lived my life, you know. So Dan came back and he's like, there I am, homeless in my car. I've got my stereo like piled up on my duvet, and the speakers are up to the roof of the car. And he says, yeah, I've just passed the Royal Marines PRC. And then he looked at me and he said, well, of course, you couldn't do it, Chris. And I turned around and said, you want to bet? So that was it. I'm actually writing about this in my book because, as some of you know, I ran 1,000 miles non-stop last year, carrying like a full Bergen, which is a full rucksack, so 14 kilo rucksack. I ran an ultramarathon a day for 1,000 miles, the length of Britain, to raise awareness of this alarming level of veteran suicide we've got at the moment. And in the book that I'm writing, I'm talking about how I accidentally joined the Marines. And what I did is I turned around to my friend Dan and said, I can join, you know. And and I went for a mile run around something where I used to live at a place called Helmston in Dartmoor. It's a fictitious name, by the way, because it clashes with my other memoirs that I've written if I reveal sort of too much details about that place. But anyway, I ran a mile around something called the Helmston Rock, and it was one of the hardest things I had to do, and I refused to stop under the proviso, if I can run this mile without stopping, I'm going down the recruiting office on Monday and joining the Marines. And that's what happened. I hung in there. I was dying. I managed to run this mile without stopping. And on the Monday after, I think it was Christmas holidays, I went to the recruiting office and I said, I'd like to forward an application to join the Royal Marines. And the only reason I was saying that nonsense is that's what Dan told me you're supposed to say, right? He said, okay, get up on that pull-up bar. So I jumped up on this pull-up bar and I just knocked out 29 pull-ups. And he said, right, okay, get down. I thought, oh no, I failed it, haven't I? I bet other lads do like 50 or something like that. Turns out the average that people do in the recruiting office is like 4 or 5 pull-ups. And I just done 29. I think this guy was this sort of old sergeant major was a bit gobsmacked, you know. So that was it. Sent me off to my PRC, my potential recruits course. Got called into a room. There was about 13 of us in the room. In fact, there were 15 started the course. 5 got medically discharged because they either got broken or they just couldn't handle it, or they couldn't climb the ropes, for example. So there's 10 of us, about 10 left in that room. He said, right, he said, 7 of you gentlemen, if you could go outside, please. And we went outside and we're just looking at each other and, frick, we failed, man, you know, we failed it. And I was absolutely just gutted, distraught, you know. I had to prove to my family, this is what young men do. They prove themselves, right? There's a lesson there for anyone listening to this. You know, we prove ourselves by doing extreme things like joining the military to go off and kill other young men who are trying to prove themselves, right? So anyway, I digress, but I'm outside this room thinking, damn, I failed it. I've got to go back. My family are going to say, yeah, I told you so. You're not worth anything. And I'll be humiliated. And these 3 guys came out and they'd obviously been told not to say anything to us. And they just walked straight past. Oh, see you fellas. You know, they went down to the train station. He said, okay, gentlemen, enter. And this colour sergeant just looks at us. He said, right, pat yourselves on the back. You've all just joined the Royal Marines. Yes, absolutely one of the best moments of my life. You know, got a few good moments. Passing my driving test was good. When I became an aeroplane pilot, you know, that was good. Running 1,000 miles, well, that was okay. You know, I think things dull as you get older, don't they? You take them all in your stride, or you should learn to. But passing that Royal Marines potential recruits course was way better than passing out of the 32 weeks of commando training itself and getting my Green Beret. Just that 3-day course, I'll never forget it. I went home. I was the happiest man you can ever imagine. So, stay tuned in the next video. I will tell you a bit about Royal Marines training maybe, or certainly going to tell you another story. Thank you, friends.